Currently the social media officer for the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which is an institution that was awarded the 2017 Nobel Peace Laureate. Venessa uses digital media to drive change on some of the world's most urgent issues. Her work has been recognised in the Oxford Handbook of Digital Diplomacy and exhibited at the Judd Foundation as part of Artists Against the Bomb. She has spoken and joined roundtables at the United Nations, the European Parliament, Harvard University and Mexico City's Axe Ceremonia, using every platform to advocate for peace, justice, freedom, reminding us that we are not free until all of us are free. Vanessa. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
No, of course. So what's brought you to humanitarian work? What's been your journey to this point?
I think, to be honest, it was my mum. So I always have to big up my mumsy. Yeah, big up mumsy. She's not here, but I'm sure she'll watch the videos. She was a person who came to the UK in the 60s and was part of what is known as the Windrush generation, came over from the Caribbean and became a social worker and then decided to study at university in social policy. And when she studied at university, I was around 10 years old, and I used to spend a lot of time in the library with her while she was doing her assignments, and inevitably I started to pick up what she was learning, what she was thinking about, what she was talking about. And she showed me that sadly the world wasn't always a just and equitable place, and I think it planted a seed in me that it's like, okay, I understand that now, and there's something that I can do about it, there's something that we can all do about it. So as I grew and I started getting into the working world and realised how much inequity there was, how much pain, how much trauma, and how much the legacy of racism and colonialism was impacting us, I almost had no choice but to follow this path. And luckily it's led me to so many different directions, meeting with amazing people and, continuing to do this collective work. So I think it started with my mother, and then it's just continued through me with support from the universe and the ancestors, really.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
A really beautiful answer, echoing what Rupali just said. I love how you ended with the universe and the ancestors, and I think I'll pick up from there. Because I feel like my part in humanitarian is something that no matter how much I steer away from it, I still always come back to it. So I really do feel strongly that the universe and my ancestors have led me there. Thank you for reading my bio. And also thank you all for being here to listen to us. I don't take this platform and this mic for granted. So thank you for having us. But as Rupali said, my activism kind of journey kick-started with learning about the DRC. When I learned about the DRC, it made me angry. And anger, when used well, brings about change. And so my anger about the injustices, as my co-panelist has just said, is what kept driving me, and I kept looking for ways to redirect that anger into change, into doing something about it. And that's how I started working with John and Palita. That's how I started working with Dr. Denise Mukwege. That's how I ended up in the role that I'm doing now, and in all the spaces in which I've been able to speak. I guess I'm still very angry about the situation, and that's what has driven me to use every platform, every mic that I have to advocate and raise awareness on the humanitarian crisis around the world, specifically the DRC, but not solely the DRC. I currently work on international security, specifically nuclear weapons issues. That is another issue that makes me really angry, that is deeply connected to what is happening in the DRC, but we'll unpack that as we speak.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Can you unpack for us what is really happening in Congo? Because a lot of us know, there's hashtag Free Congo, there's this, there's that, but what is really happening in Congo?
So it's a humanitarian crisis, and it's a genocide in all means, terms, and definitions. So one thing if there's one thing that you take away from here tonight, there's a genocide happening in the DRC right now. And the causes are many, but one way the world tries to portray to us that it's a complex issue. It is not that complicated. What is happening is that the DRC is a country, just like the whole of Africa, motherland, that is deeply, deeply, deeply rich with minerals. You name it, uranium, coltan that we use in all our technological gadgets, gold, diamond, titanium. It's so rich, specifically with uranium. So the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the project that started the nuclear weapons, most of the uranium came from the DRC. It didn't come from the US. It didn't come from Europe. It didn't come from, the minds that were behind it. It came from the DRC. So because it's so rich, everybody wants a piece of the cake. Everybody wants to get their hands on it. But they want to do it at the detriment of the civilians, at the detriment of the DRC. They want to do it at a cheap price. They don't want to pay the DRC what they are worth. And that's why we are seeing right now so many rebel groups, so many factions, so many foreign interests, imperialist interests that are actively contributing to the humanitarian crisis that is happening. The way that they do it is different. The history of the Congo has been entrenched in all these foreign hands wanting to be involved and take ownership of what is of the richness that is on the Congolese land.
Actually, it's funny you said that, because that was going to lead to my next question, which is, what is the role of foreign powers or foreign companies in Congo? Because we know, yes, we have this natural resources in Congo, and of course the Congolese people cannot really process this natural resources and make something out of it for themselves, so these foreign powers, they come in and then they take advantage. So what is the role of these foreign powers?
Organizations like Tesla don't want to pay the amount of money that they have to pay for the uranium. So what they do is that they fuel the conflict that is happening. But it's not just organizations like Tesla. We also have governments being actively involved in this. And that's where the tricky part comes, and that's where the nuances comes, when we have governments being involved. And also governments not openly admitting their involvement. Again, because who will openly admit that they're involved in a genocide, right? So governments like Rwanda, the US, France, Italy, all these other imperialist governments, they all have a hand in taking the riches and the resources that is in the DRC. Rwanda and Uganda, those two countries have been involved in wars in the DRC, the first Congo War and the second Congo War. These two countries actually actively fought on the DRC land to be able to take ownership of the DRC resources. What we are seeing right now is rebel groups. You might have heard M23 is a name that resounds a lot. The M23 is a terrorist, I call it a terrorist organization. It is a terrorist organization that is actively being backed by Rwanda to basically take over the eastern part of DRC. Currently, they have taken over Goma and Bukavu. And the reason why those two are so important is because they are not just strategic points, but they are also very, very, very rich in minerals. When it comes to Rwanda specifically, Rwanda doesn't have as many natural resources as the DRC, but it exports a lot more than the DRC exports. So where do those minerals come from? Those minerals are being channeled by the rebels all through Rwanda. And specifically with M23, research estimates that they have about 6,000 soldiers, right? However, the way that they were able to take over Goma and Bukavu and hold onto those territories, hold onto that power, guides all of us, all the researchers, to one conclusion only, which is that they are being actively backed by government. They are being actively, the arms that they are using, the tools that they have, they're too advanced. They have too much. So we have countries like Rwanda plundering the money so that these rebel groups will keep fostering the conflict that is happening, and they can keep extracting the minerals and exporting them and selling at a very cheap price. But then it's not just Rwanda. The European Union is super complicit in this. A lot of Western governments are super complicit in this because they earn out of it. I was reading recently that the EU, actually 10 years ago, we tried to get the EU to pass a law on the traceability of coltan. And what that means is that whatever minerals that Rwanda is selling, the EU has to do their homework and make sure that those are not blood minerals. Because the way that these organizations or these corporations get around it is that they say, oh, we just bought it. We don't know where it comes from, but we bought it. Our supplier is the one that you guys have to deal with. right? But with this law, we are hoping to be able to force them to trace where it comes from. So you can't no more hide your hands behind your back and say, it's my supplier who didn't do their due diligence and didn't check that these are in conflict minerals. You have to know, you have to be aware. However, that has not happened, and what we are seeing now is that the EU is having conversations about possible, possible kind of economic sanctions for Rwanda, but nothing is being done. The US has sanctioned some Rwandan ministers. The UK has sanctioned some Rwandan ministers, but none of them have stopped doing business with them, right? So, like, what is all these sanctions without doing anything about it?
Yeah.
Right. So, just to add to what you just said, what's going on in Congo, as we can hear right now, is not just a threat to Congolese, it's a threat to Africa. And until we Africans see it as a threat to us, then the whole world will see it as a threat to humanity. Because it goes beyond just Congolese, do you know what I mean? And to be in a situation where another African country is being used to torture and extract minerals from another country, that is so unacceptable. But that is the trick they've always done in the past, always divide and conquer, because we are not united as a people, and that is the foundation. That's something that I want every one of us here today to go home with. Understand that there's no difference between a Ghanaian and a Nigerian. The only thing is our jollof tastes different. You know what I mean? We dress different, we talk different, but we are all the same people. We have to protect our own. We have to see ourselves as one.
What do you think these times are asking for us, specifically for Congo as well? Like, what kind of consciousness or commitment are we needing to make here?
I think it's really a combination between looking back at where we've been whilst being abreast of current situations. So we heard about different things here like divide and conquer and mechanisms that were used by colonizers to divide us. And one of the things that I think is really important is having a think about where we've been. Because sometimes when I'm delivering workshops or sessions around social justice issues, people will say to me, oh, it's really weird that XYZ, or it's really weird that XYZ. And I'll say, no, it's not weird. It's actually part of a colonial paradigm, a colonial plan. So, you know, when we look at the history of the continent of Africa and the dehumanization of African people, we were consistently told that African bodies, for example, don't feel pain. African bodies have different pathologies and different biologies, which of course we now know is debunked. However, those factors mean that still, through many years of essentially white supremacy and whiteness informing our perceptions, that we're not able to see African bodies and other melanated bodies with humanity.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes it can feel very confusing when we're seeing maybe people in power or people in positions of government with melanated skin having that same lack of humanity towards melanated bodies, but it's because they're under the veil of whiteness or under the veil of colonialism. So I think it's really important to be exactly like as you are, Venessa, keeping abreast of what's going on now so we can create change, but also understanding the history and the steps that got us to this point in the first place.
Yeah.
And I would also add, in terms of, you know, having a united Africa, thinking even further, if we are from the African diaspora, because, you know, there's connections of African people all over the world in terms of African American, African Caribbean, African Latin communities, and actually the fracture and the disjointedness has gone so far that actually we need to start bringing the pieces back together. Otherwise, their continued conquer and divide is what will keep us separate.
Right. Just to add to what you just said, that's a very beautiful thing you said, Lildonia. That's very beautiful, and that's very, very important, because as a people, we need to understand where we're from in order for us to know where we're going. Because right now, it just seems like there's a bunch of Africans scattered all across Earth, and they're just confused. They don't even know where they're from. And it's no fault of their own, because there's been systems in place to make us forget who we are, because they know that the collective power of blacks and Africans is so powerful that nothing can withstand it. Now, something you should understand is Africa is the most richest in terms of land and minerals. It is so rich. It's just no human should live in that way, especially when your land is blessed from God. But then we have a situation where we are just scattered and we don't even support our own. Like, they've made us feel like, oh, Africans, the first thing you think about an African is primitive. You know, it's tribes. They reduce us to tribes, but we were nations. We were great nations. But then, up until recently, I didn't even know much about African history because it wasn't taught in school, and that's the truth. It wasn't taught in school. You go to school, they teach you so much about Napoleon, they teach you about all these people, and they don't teach you nothing about where you're from, which is really sad. You know, they make you write English exam, but they don't make you write your own language exam to actually have a sense of where you're from. And I feel like education is the first thing that we need to do as a people, even to help Congo, help any African nation that's dealing with the imperialists right now. We need to educate ourselves. We need to know our history. Like I said earlier, if we don't know where we're from, we can never know where we're going. We need to identify what our role is in today's age and effect those changes, like what these beautiful ladies are doing today, you know, creating the foundation for the next generation to take it up. How do we educate? How do we inform people about what's going on?
I think one of the most important things is to be aware of any fear we might have of speaking out, because there can be a lot of fear of getting it in quote marks wrong, saying the wrong thing, not knowing how to speak our truth. But actually, more often than not, speaking up is so much more important than allowing the fear to take over. If all of the greats before us, the great humanitarians, the great civil rights activists, the great social justice warriors, sat in their fear, we literally wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially important for allies, because I think there's a lot of focus, and rightly so, on us as people of global majority, as people of African heritage, to do the work. But actually there's a strong part of it in terms of allies, white people, people from global minority, because we cannot solely dismantle systems that we didn't create, actually. And so I think that fear piece is a really big one, because a lot of people can say, oh, I don't really know where to start, I don't know how to speak out. Actually, speaking out is the most important thing, especially in rooms where African people may not be represented. That's a really, really important one. So taking that fear, feeling it, and being like, I'm going to move through it. If you have to speak to someone afterwards, debrief, talk to an ally, go for a massage, whatever. But speak out, feel the fear, and basically do it anyway. And I think that's really important for us, for anyone who's in a position of privilege to do so, actually.
If I could just add on to what you said, I think the fear one, you put it so beautifully, the sitting with it and getting through it. But also one question that I had when I first got involved was, what do I do, right? It's such a big issue. It is such a global issue, and sometimes it just feels like we're never gonna win, right? Sometimes it feels so hard. But what helped me was to start with what I have where I am. So when I was in high school, for instance, I was collecting petitions for John Rupali and Dr. Denise Mukwege, and then starting through that and going on through and just carrying on the work and doing with what I have. As I went through the different stages, every single platform, whatever you have, you can do something with it. Now, and I always say it's a huge blessing that I get to still work in activism and to work as an activist, basically. I still get to carry on that voice. So start where you are with what you have. And I think for us in the diaspora especially, a big focus and a big help would be to amplify the grassroots voices of our brothers and sisters in the DRC. So we might not have all the answers, we might not have all the research, we might not know the numbers, but you can amplify the voices of the civilians suffering. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of politics around it. Like the first part where we talked about the economic interest, all these imperialist interests that are going in, all these policies that are being put into place, these sanctions that are not working, all these things that are happening. At the root of it all, at the base level of it all, the civilians are the ones suffering. Women are being, like, rape is being used as a tool of war in the DRC. Can you imagine as a person, like, your body being turned into a battleground? Your body is where the war is being. So just think about those and amplify those. And as to add on to what my co-panelist said right now about the fear, another emotion is the pain and the hurt. It's a lot. You know, reading these stories, learning about these stories, speaking with these people, being around these people, being around survivors, it's heavy, it weighs on your heart. So find community, find spaces like this, find other people to lean on while you are amplifying those voices. But in every single room in which you are, you can amplify the voice of the DRC. Because either we like it or not, the case of the Congo, it entrenches in everything and everything that we do.
Yeah.
In every social issue, every social cause that we do.
Yeah.
Speaking about Palestine, for instance, right, and the genocide that is happening right now and the Israeli hand in it, one of the worst criminals right now fueling the conflict in the DRC is an Israeli miner, right? So all of that is linked, right? And there's links everywhere. So whenever you can, amplify and speak, and always go back to the civilians, to the grassroots, or brothers and sisters on the ground, because they are the ones who can actually tell us what they need. We can theorize all over we want. We can write all the policies as we want, but they on the ground are the ones who have the answers. So find them, find their stories. There's so many organizations that are working on the ground. Get in touch with them and amplify those voices, amplify those stories, because that's what we need right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that will wrap it up.
I'm going to start with you, Lildonia, just quickly, just one last message for the audience.
The last message I would have is try your best to look after yourself in your fight for justice. I know it can go down a slippery slope of continually wanting to fight the fight, which I'm sure we've all felt at times, and we need to keep fighting. But in order to keep fighting, we need to fuel ourselves. So we need to fuel ourselves through joy. We need to fuel ourselves through connection. We need to fuel ourselves through community so that we can keep on going. So that would be my massive message, because the amazing people that I see doing the work around me, like my peers here, are tireless, absolutely tireless. But if we're tired, we can't keep on fighting. So I think that looking after yourself is the big one I'd like to share.
Wow. Thank you very much. What about you, Vanessa?
I will hammer again on the amplifying the voices of those on the ground, especially as people in the diaspora. We are seeing right now that the media isn't covering what is happening to our brothers and sisters in the DRC. There's a lot of silence, complicit silence, in masquerading their voices, covering their stories, because of all the imperialist interest and all the imperialist concerns that are there. So keep speaking about it, keep raising about it, but also global solidarity, because we are not free until all of us are free. So as we are speaking about Palestine, we speak about DRC. As we are fighting for Haiti, we are fighting for DRC.
Yes.
As we are fighting for Sudan, we are fighting for DRC, because we are not free until all of us, every single one of us, are free. And if I can just say one last thing about connecting what is happening right now in Gaza, and like we are being gaslit on a global level about the genocide that is happening there. There's so much, like we are clearly seeing the images, and the same thing with the DRC. When you think about what is happening in the DRC, we see the images, we read the stories, we know that kids are being harmed, from child soldier to rape. We know that all of this it's happening, but we are being gaslit on a global level. Kagame recently, the president of Rwanda, did an interview where he said he doesn't know that there are Rwandan troops in the DRC. He's unaware. He's the commander-in-chief of the Rwandan army. He doesn't know, though, that there are troops in the DRC. So on a global level, we are being told by our government that these things aren't happening, but they are happening. And the way that we can raise awareness about it is our socials, right? That is our media. When the national media, when the world media doesn't want to amplify the stories and the voices of our brothers and sisters, that's what we can do. So even if it's just a story that you are reposting about the DRC, it really does make a difference, guys. But then don't stop at the story, do more. And that's why events like this and spaces like this are so important to be able to speak about these things. But anywhere and everywhere you are, don't forget our brothers and sisters in the DRC, because if we don't amplify their voices, as we are clearly seeing, nobody will. So we have to do the work. We have to pull the weight. And it's a heavy weight, but as Lildonia rightly said, find community to lean on. So it's a bit less, but always pick it up, and we have to. Because we will win in the end. We're not going to let them win, right? The imperialists aren't going to win. We are going to win this fight. But we have to keep going. And sometimes it seems very far, but we'll get there.
Thank you.
And just to add, don't buy any new tech. Just recycle secondhand. Do not feed that empire. A big problem, is the lack of media. I saw a stat that was 0.1% of news media has been shared in the last 24 years on Congo. So we need awareness. We need to use these devices because otherwise they're going to be used for harm, as they are already.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. Finally, just to bring it home, guys, I feel like the most important thing we need to take out of here today is understand that, like she said, no African nation is free until all African nation is free. And we should really make it important, like a part of us, to educate ourselves about our history, to know where we're from. And because, trust me, once you start doing it, you uncover so much. And then you know how or why people look at you different as a black person. You know the power that you hold. You know the narrative that's been told way before you came here. Trust me, the struggle that we're dealing with right now, it didn't start here. It started way long ago. And it will continue. But it is very important that we understand where we fall in as a people, as a nation, to really educate ourselves, inform ourselves, and take part of any collective movement that can actually create a better future for Africans. And also humanity. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the most important thing. All right? Thank you very much, guys, for coming up. Thank you so much.